Hello, my name is Chris. In this video, I want to go over the game design document for this Rummy battle card game that I designed. In the last video, when I did a brief overview of this game's design, and toward the end, I mentioned how the way I was able to make this prototype really quickly, really in a week, was that I was able to reference or put all my ideas and get them straightened out in my head in a game design document that was pretty brief. But let's go ahead and jump into that, and I'll tell you why that document was really good for me. So again, this isn't a devlog video. This is really for just going over my process, how I do things, and going over this game's design. In this video specifically, we'll just be looking at this game design doc. So I had this idea for this game several weeks ago, and there was a point in time where I got really sick and I wasn't able to do much. Excuse me. I was able to get on the computer for a little bit, and what I had in my head while I was sick at this time was this game, so I couldn't really work anyway. And so I put this game's idea out of my mind and onto this game design document. And the very first thing I like to do is create an overview and a core mechanic, just a quick description anytime I create a game design document. And it's really just to help paint the bigger picture of the game. We see here in the overview, this could be something you may see in like your Steam page description or something, but really at the core of the game, it's a different way to play 52 card Rummy. And in this game specifically, we have to overcome dangers of a mysterious tower through turn-based combat. Don't forget to pack a pistol and a blade and 52 cards. Maybe there should be a little more there, but it gets the general idea across. Now, here's the core mechanic that we really care about in the game. Players fight against opponents by placing matching sets of 3 or more cards called melds into equipment slots. And if we look here in the game, we can see that. Let me reset the board. So here's a meld of 3 cards, an 8, a 9, and a 10 of diamonds. And I put that in the equipment slots of this blade, and I click on it, and I can use it. And so that's really the core mechanic of the game is using equipment cards in a Rummy-based game, or rule restriction, really, to create a game. The inspirations, of course, is 52 card Rummy 500. Rummy 500 is actually the real variation off of Rummy that this game is based on. And then Slay the Spire and Dicey Dungeons. This game is not really a deck builder. It plays more like Dicey Dungeons. But these are really the main inspirations. Here are some pillars to the game: meaningful decisions in character and equipment upgrades, grim dark tone, and replayable. Replayable is really what we're going after. Can we play the game many different ways? And I'm going to try really hard not to make this game a roguelike, but a lot of roguelikes are replayable. Now, what I really am going for is meaningful decisions in character and equipment upgrades. That would be the bigger deal to me, because you do that, and then maybe you actually add replayability just out of doing this here. Now, I have grim dark tone really is just the pillar for the art theme, but it's not really a big deal. Design and development restrictions. This was mostly just to keep my budget in check, just to keep my budget and asset management in check. Because I have little to no budget, all of my audio is sourced from YouTube or free online sources, and the assets are either free or purchased off of itch.io. So far, I think I've spent less than $10 on the assets on this game. And then I have this team skill analysis section here. You don't always need this, but it always depends on who you're pitching a game to or who's looking at this. Again, I have a tendency to make the first page of my GDD a one-pager doc. But I will say I added this section mostly so I can keep myself in a certain scope and really work on the things that I'm strongest in. Now, really, when I look in these columns here, you know, I say weaknesses and strengths. These are just things that I've been able to flex the most or the least in my game design career and game development or system design development career. I have done level design. I have done character design. I have done world building and story design. Just not a lot. It's not to say I'm not good at it if I don't, you know, but like any muscle, you know, if I flex those muscles or work those muscles a little more, I'm sure I can get those things up a little higher. Now, this section and really the whole reason why I created the game design doc in the first place, and you may have heard me mention it, was keeping myself in scope. If I didn't have this document or I didn't have something on paper, you know, a tendency for myself and really a lot of people is to just go ahead and start creating things, and things start slipping slowly out of scope. Things start getting really big. And then some ideas that may seem cool or awesome to work on really just don't fit the game, but you thought of them while you were making it, and so, you know, why not? So this game design doc really helped me just stay true to the game's core, which we'll look at here shortly. I added a terms to know page for anyone who wanted to see the doc, but also the code, because you see a lot of these same terms within the code, like runs, sets, suits, ranks, discard pile, stock. You'll see a lot of these in the code, but it really just tells you what those terms are. This game is based off of melds, and melds is anytime you play 3 or more matching cards, and your melds are either sets or runs. A set is 3 or more of the same ranked card. So we see an example here: 2 of hearts, 2 of diamonds, 2 of clubs, 2 of spades. So those are the same set, or cards of the same set. Cards that are in a run are in the same suit, not in the same rank, but in the same suit, and the ranking of the cards are sequential and they do not break. In this game, aces are low, so the example we have here is an ace of hearts, a 2 of hearts, a 3 of hearts, and a 4 of hearts. Likewise, a jack of spades, queen of spades, king of spades. If you want to see more of this stuff in action, you can go to the previous video and see how this plays in the game. Next, I have a player section just to put down some very rough ideas of what I want the game's resources to be, what I want the player to focus on. So the player's resources are really going to be focusing only on health, currency, equipment, and abilities. The actions, these are all the actions the players can take. And then here we have items. And items and resources may look similar, but resources are really any kind of stat or number that the player has to manage. Items can make up some of that, but items talk specifically about the items that have to be created in the design in the game engine by developers. So we have cheese, which is the currency, health upgrades, equipment, and then merchant goods. I have starting player equipment here because I wanted to get a good idea right off the bat of what I wanted the equipment to play like, or at least how varied I wanted the equipment to be, so I knew how to structure the code. And then we have no unlockable equipment just yet. There's a card section in here just to talk about how the deck is made up, and then the card descriptions and how the deck is shared between players. And then this gameplay section here. Now, this gameplay section here, when it comes to this starting the game section all the way down to post-combat, this is what I actually wrote first on the game design doc. I wrote this gameplay section first. And then that kind of helped me build out the rest of the game, because as I was thinking about the gameplay part, I'm just thinking about all the things that the player will interact with, what they'll need, the kind of resources you should expect to see on screen or while in combat or off screen, or not off screen, but while you're not in combat. And this is really where I was able to put a lot of my focus in the design and development of the game inside the game engine, was by just strictly adhering to this gameplay section. And you see it's really, a page long. So starting the game, starting a battle, taking a turn, when the cards run out, ending combat, and post-combat. And you see that's only a page long. Now, what if I didn't create this game design document and I just started going into Unity and creating a bunch of stuff? Well, if I'm like, okay, now this game looks great, let's put it on the game design doc. You may struggle to kind of put together this gameplay portion. Or it may be a little muddier than you think, or you'll have features that are kind of one-off and out of scope because there were no pillars defined, there's no scope defined or anything. So you wind up having a game mechanic that really doesn't add to the game in any way. And at the end here, I have a map section, which really shouldn't be in here because there's no map. But this was a general first iteration idea of maybe how I wanted the map to work. Because again, I really don't want this to be a roguelike of any kind. But, I'll do whatever lends itself towards the gameplay loop. Now, I want to go up to the core gameplay loop area because I have a discrepancy from the last video. Now, the last video I described this core gameplay loop very briefly, but I want to do something here because I have a tendency to map my core gameplay loop to the game's core mechanic, and that's actually not what you should do, because the internet will give you several definitions of a core gameplay loop, and one of those is easily, what does the player do on a second-to-second basis? And then you have other loops that kind of support that core gameplay loop. And if you see how this core gameplay loop is actually written out, it is almost a word for word with a little bit more detail to the core mechanic description here at the top. So let's go look at that real quick. So the core mechanic, the core gameplay centers around card battles based on the 52 card Rummy 500 variation. Players fight against opponents by placing matching sets of 3 or more cards called melds into equipment slots. This activates the equipment, and the equipment can be used. Now, if I go down to the core gameplay loop description, we'll see where the discrepancy is, because what I believe to be the more popular definition of the core gameplay loop is, yes, we want to know what the player's doing constantly over and over again, but it should make a loop. And if you read this out loud, the loop kind of stops. Really, the loop that I was describing in this section was the loop of just the turn. So I take a turn, then another turn, then another turn. But that's not really the core gameplay. It is at its heart, but really the core gameplay also includes equipment variation. And so realistically, what should be in here is this supporting gameplay loop here should be taken out, and we should place that right here. And then we can remove this part of this supporting gameplay loop here. And now we really have two main gameplay loops. So we can shorten all of this to start match with opponent, play equipment cards with Rummy melds. When match, gain loot, acquire new equipment that allows for different ways to play, go to next point on map. And so that's the real gameplay loop. That's both a little bit of a focus on the core mechanic, but also just zoomed out just a little bit to see what the player is really going to be doing from a moment to moment, you know, both a second to second basis, but just outside of that as well on a match to match basis. And then we have the supporting gameplay loop here, which will support this core gameplay loop. And that is that, you know, navigating the world, going from point to point, in which case it's not just combat matches. We're also interacting with merchants, and we're going to have opportunities to upgrade our character abilities and mess around with equipment and stuff like that. So anything we can do to support the core gameplay loop is what we're after here. Okay, I think that covers everything as far as this game design document goes. Again, I want to stress the importance that this is not a devlog. This is just recordings of me going through a design process. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it, but if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for more videos, because I have some videos coming up regarding the code, prototyping code versus non-prototyping code, and things like that within this game. So thanks. I appreciate it. Bye.